I have a question for you. Does your freeze-dried food explode? Now you might find that odd that I'd ask that, but I have a little bit of a demonstration here. I packaged some food about a month and 2 days ago. So basically about 33 days ago I packaged this food. And I did it improperly, and I did it with some ice crystals still in the food, so it wasn't totally dry. Because I wanted to show you what happens when you package food that is not thoroughly dry. Sometimes you'll find these little cold spots in your food, and you might be tempted to go ahead and package it up, but this is a warning that your food needs to be absolutely dry, no cold spots. So I'm going to show you what can happen here. So I'm going to snip off just one of these little corners right here. And I'm going to see if I can make a hole leading into the food. I'm just going to make a little teeny hole right there to get my igniter. I'm not sure if you saw that, but I hope you did. See that little flame that shot out? That's because when food decomposes, it often generates two gases. One, it will generate methane, and another gas it will generate is hydrogen sulfide. Both of those gases are flammable. They're also known as sewer gases, because those are the gases that are produced when food is decaying or rotting. Now, to be honest with you, I stacked the deck. I put foods in here that I knew would generate large amounts of gases when they started to break down. Well, this is not your everyday occurrence, but I wanted to show you and demonstrate to you what could happen when food is improperly freeze-dried. There are two meals I enjoy throughout the year. One of them is New England clam chowder, which is homemade. Love the stuff. The other one is barbecue, chicken, and roasted potatoes. We have them several times a year, and I'd like to share them with you. So, this is my clam chowder. It doesn't look real appetizing, does it? And this is my barbecue, chicken, and roasted potatoes. The only thing, these were made 15 days ago, and then I put them into this jar and set them on top of my warm refrigerator. So basically, what we're going to be looking at are the gases that can be detected when food goes bad. So the food inside of here is very bad. And we're going to use my little friend, my atmosphere tester, to find out what's inside these containers. Well, one of the things that we're going to find inside of here is going to be hydrogen sulfide gas. And that is one of the chief indicators. It's a chief indicating gas of spoiled food. Hydrogen sulfide gas is also that really nasty smelling gas that would come out of a manhole cover over a sewer. These little devices are used by individuals who go into confined space. Manholes, sewers are all confined space, and sometimes, and often, hydrogen sulfide gas and other gases such as methane will push out the oxygen and make a confined space extremely dangerous. And so workers will have something like this on their belts that will tell them of the amount of hydrogen sulfide gas, explosive gases such as methane, amount of oxygen, and amount of carbon monoxide. So we're going to use this tester to test the gases inside these containers. Now what I did is when I bottled these up, I used aluminum foil on the top that would allow me to use this to spear through the foil to sample the gases inside. And after we do this, I went through my freeze-dried inventory and found some foods that were 3 years old that contain one of the really problem elements in the freeze-drying industry, fats and oils. So we're going to get this all set up, and we're going to go ahead and measure this, and we're going to see what the results are. We're going to do, let's do the clam chowder first. Well, I can smell the smell right now. So right now we're at 18, actually we're at 32 carbon monoxide, 25 hydrogen sulfide. We have 18% of methane and only 5% of oxygen. And I can smell it from here. It is not a pleasant smell. Let's see, we're up to, oh man, 28%, okay, 29 parts per million of hydrogen sulfide. Well, let me see if I can just, you can take a look at this thing. This is just absolutely going crazy here. So we're around 27 hydrogen sulfide, 29 carbon monoxide, 16% methane, and only 9% oxygen. So, I mean, if this was smell-o-vision, you'd smell what I'm smelling, and it's not pleasant. So I'm going to take that out. Oh, I'm going to take a break. We're going to take the barbecue chicken and roast potatoes, and we're going to see what surprises are inside. So we're getting, wow, this is 569 parts per million on carbon monoxide. The methane has pegged out the meter, and we're getting 9 parts per million hydrogen sulfide, but we're just really going wild on the carbon monoxide in here and on the methane. And we're at about 4 or 5% of oxygen. So you can see, and I can smell, that my barbecue chicken and roasted potatoes have definitely gone south. So I went through my inventory and picked out a bunch of candidates to test. All this food looks like it's about 2.5 years old. Some are actually approaching 3 years, but it's what the food is that's going to be interesting. Okay, so this is pepperoni, back from March 5th of 2020. Pepperoni, lots of oil, and then we got white turkey meat, and we got ham. We have hamburger. A classic one of experimental, Little Smokies. Lots of fat in the Little Smokies. And then we have cooked roast beef, and another one that's going to be really interesting. Who has tried to freeze dry hot dogs? Kind of like the Little Smoky thing. And these are hot dog slices. They're not the complete hot dog. And then we have raw roast beef. So the raw roast beef would have fat that hasn't been rendered like the cooked roast beef. And then I also have raw chicken, white meat, from almost 3 years ago. So we're going to go through all these bags. I'm going to puncture the corner, stick the meter in, and we're going to see what kind of gases are inside of here. And then I'm going to repackage these and then put them back in my inventory. But it'll be kind of interesting to check out the hot dogs and the little smokies and the pepperoni to see how that has fared for almost the last 3 years. Now, when I was testing my clam chowder and my barbecue chicken, one of the gases we came up with in the test was carbon monoxide. Now, when I test all these, we're going to get carbon monoxide. And whether you use a Mylar bag or a canning jar, if you use an oxygen absorber canning your food or storing your food, you're going to get carbon monoxide. It's a fact of life, because as the iron powder absorbs the oxygen through oxidation, one of the secondary chemicals in those little absorber packets is charcoal or carbon. And when the iron absorbs the oxygen, it creates heat. And because there's carbon mingled in with that reaction, the carbon gets burned, and that produces carbon monoxide. It's not something to worry about. You don't have to freak out. It's not going to harm you. It's a very small amount. And if you use it in grains and it produces carbon monoxide, well, that's just going to kill the weevils and any other critters that might be in there. So just let you know, this thing is going to go into alarm with carbon monoxide, and it's going to go into alarm with a low oxygen atmosphere. But the thing we want to look out for is going to be hydrogen sulfide gas and methane. And we're ready to test. So we're going to do hamburger first. So there we go. We are testing, let's see, we're at 20, 22. The carbon monoxide is increasing, and we're down about 4% oxygen. But as we continue to test, the oxygen is going to increase because it's sucking air in from the outside back into the bag and up through my probe. But the good thing is there's no hydrogen sulfide gas and there's no methane. So the hamburger looks good. We're back again. Had to turn off my machine and let it reset itself. The next one we're going to be doing is going to be ham. And we're getting, wow, 550 parts per million on carbon monoxide. It actually, the carbon monoxide actually pegged out the meter. And on my ham, I'm actually getting 8 parts per million on hydrogen sulfide gas, and I'm getting 50% of methane. So let's take a look at the ham. We pull this out here. So we're going to take a look at the ham and see what's the deal with this. Now, I have a lot of ham in my inventory, and I've used ham out of my inventory. I've never had any problems with it. So let's see here. Smells like ham. I actually had 2 oxygen absorbers in here. Now, one thing I'm noticing here is these oxygen absorbers are oily to the touch, which is an interesting thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. As long as I can keep the oxygen out of my bags, there shouldn't be a problem with that oil. Now, one other thing I'm noticing here is I can't break my ham. I'm trying to, you know how your food in your freeze dryer should be crispy and you can snap it easily? Well, this ham won't break. I mean, that's a little bit dry, but it's actually, do I want to use the term moist? This actually feels oily and moist. It's not crunchy like freeze-dried food should be. So this is very interesting about the texture of this ham. Like I said, it smells like ham. Now the first thing I'm noticing here is going through here is I'm seeing a lot of fat. I mean, I got a big piece of fat right here, and this fat, if I dig at it, this is oily. It's still like fat. It's greasy. So that is really interesting about all the fat that's in here is still greasy and oily to the touch. And that could be one of the reasons why I'm getting that hydrogen sulfide gas is from this fat. Now, this is back when I first started freeze drying food, and I'm still kind of educating myself on here. Since then, I've been pretty careful to trim the fat. Interesting term nowadays, isn't it? To trim the fat on my food. And it looks like I had so much fat on this ham that I think the ham has gone rancid. I mean, there's no nasty, no nasty scent, but I believe this, when was this done? This was done in March 5th of 2020, so we're coming on 3 years less 3 months. So I think this particular food right here was a fail. But I'm going to have to do some more research on any dangers of meats like this. I'm not sure if I'd want to eat this, but I need to do some research. So I'm going to put the ham aside. One thing I didn't open up was my hamburger. Now when I opened the hamburger, we did not detect any methane or any hydrogen sulfide gas. This tested very well, but hamburger had a lot of fat in it. So we're going to take a look at this. Here's my oxygen absorber, and it's dry, and all my hamburger is extremely dry. No discoloration. Oh, there's a little bit of discoloration, but I don't see any problems here. It looks like hamburger, smells like hamburger, and this hamburger tested okay. So there was no problems. Even with the fat that is normally found in cooked hamburger, there's no methane or hydrogen sulfide gases detected in here. So this is definitely good and ready to go back in. In fact, I might even cook some of this up and see what it's like. Okay, the next one we're going to do is roast beef. This is rump roast, raw rump roast. Well, this is interesting. I'm actually picking up, okay, I'm getting 31 parts per million on carbon monoxide, but I'm not, the alarm's not going off, so that's interesting. But anyway, we're getting low oxygen, carbon monoxide, but no methane and no hydrogen sulfide gas. So this is my roast beef, and my oxygen absorber feels like it's spent, and my roast beef is extremely dry. I can kind of smash it and make it into a powder. I really don't feel any oil. Just for the fun of it, we're going to open this guy up. And you can see like little pieces of gravel inside my oxygen absorber. So the oxygen absorber has been spent. The roast beef tested very well. No problems with the raw roast beef. The next I have up is raw eggs. These are whole eggs, but they're raw. and I have a lot of these in my inventory. Okay, so I'm picking up 100 parts per million carbon monoxide and low oxygen, but no methane, no hydrogen sulfide gas. We'll take a look at the eggs and see what they look like. These are eggs after almost 3 years. And here's the oxygen absorber, and that is really gravelly. But these look like regular eggs, nice and powdery, and that's what we want. Next up are hot dog slices. Now, I have a feeling this is just going to fail, because when I squeeze this, I feel squishy. That's not a good sign. Remember, we're looking for crunchy. And we're going nuts. So we've maxed out on carbon monoxide, we've maxed out on methane, and we're climbing on hydrogen sulfide gas. We're almost at 8 parts per million on that. Our oxygen is around 4%. So hot dogs are not doing well. I've always wondered how my hot dogs would have fared. This is back when I first started freeze drying. You know what they look like? They look like dog treats. And they smell like dog treats. They smell like the what's a bacon dog treats? But anyway, they smell and they feel like dog treats. And the first thing that entered my mind is, would I even want to give these to my dog? These definitely show a sign of spoilage. So these are probably going to be taken out of my inventory. This is more of an experiment when I first got my freeze dryer. And hot dogs have so much fat in them, and they're cased in that membrane where you just can't get the moisture out of the hot dog. And they just don't look good. Does look like dog food, doesn't it? Doggy treats. So hot dogs was a total failure. I have some pepperoni here that I did back on March the 5th, 2020. And pepperoni has a lot of oil and grease in it. And I thought this would just be an experiment. And I went ahead and packed it, freeze dried it. And we're going to see how it turned out. Well, we're picking up some carbon monoxide, which is normal, and very low oxygen. But other than that, this pepperoni is absolutely perfect. Now I'll package this pepperoni up again, but take a look at this. It looks just like pepperoni. It's still nice and dry. And it's delicious. And the amazing thing is, it's still kind of oily. But because I was able to remove all the oxygen from it, this pepperoni has stayed fresh. Well, not fresh, but has been viable for the last 3 years. I have here from Little Smokies I freeze dried back on March 1st, 2020, almost 3 years old. So we're just going to go ahead and just open up just a little bit of this here. Well, we're getting carbon monoxide and low oxygen. So we're going to take a look to see how the Little Smokies have done over the last 3 years. And I'm quite surprised because little smokies have so much fat and oil in them. So, I mean, they still look like little smokies, and they actually still have quite noticeable fat on them, which is absolutely surprising. I mean, they actually have quite a lot of fat and oil. That's not what all this white stuff is. And they're hard as rock. They're smoky. But should I actually try to eat one? Let's just take a nibble here. It's like a little smoky, awful dry. Kind of tastes like a Slim Jim in a sense. And surprisingly, it does not taste rancid at all. If anything happens to me later on, someone please call poison control just in case. No, I'm just joking. But this is very interesting. I thought for sure these little smokies would be bad, but they're perfectly good. So I'm going to go ahead and repack these, and we'll try the next food. So my next food I have here is some raw chicken meat, and this is white breast meat. I packaged it back in April 27, 2020. Now I can't sample this because it's raw chicken, but I can rehydrate it and bring it back to life and then cook it. So we're going to see what kind of gases are going to be inside of this. So we're going to insert the probe here. And we're getting quite a bit of carbon monoxide, which is normal. So we're going to take a look and see what this kind of looks like. Well, it's nice in color. I don't see any problems with it. But like I said, this is raw, so I'm going to have to rehydrate some of this and then cook it and see how it comes out. And then I'll repackage the rest. Next up is some rump roast that's raw that I packaged back on April 25th of 2020. And we're going to take a look to see how this came out. Well, that looks like roast beef. It's absolutely dry. I mean, it's really dry. So, just like we did with the chicken, we're going to go ahead and hydrate some of this and cook it up and take a sample taste. I have my 3-year-old chicken over here with salt and pepper, and my 3-year-old roast beef over here with salt and pepper. I just kind of cooked these over the stove. And we're going to see what they taste like. Nice white meat. Tastes like chicken. It was good. Now we're going to try the roast beef here. Now that does not taste like chicken. That tastes like beef. This was delicious. 3-year-old food. Freeze-dried, not a single problem with it. It was good. Let's say it's years from now, the zombie apocalypse is in full force, and you're ready to dive into your food. So how do you know your food is still good? It's been 15, 20 years since you last packaged this up. Well, there's 5 things you can do to test your food to see if it's still good. These are really not scientific, but they're pretty good. Now, you don't need to go out and buy yourself a $1,500 monitor to test for gases, because even with some of the gases that are in the food, doesn't mean your food is actually bad. Anyway, number 1, you want to do what I call the crunch test. You want to get your bag and move it around. Is it crunchy? So that's my hamburger. I have some ultimate scrambled eggs with bacon, onions, and such. Go ahead and crunch it. I have crab meat. Nice and crunchy. I have cooked chicken. Still crunchy. Okay, I got some raw chicken. Crunchy. And I got some raw roast beef. Now, this one is not crunchy, so doesn't mean it's bad, but this one failed the crunch test. Okay, the next thing you want to do, you want to open these up. Good, we're going to take the crab meat and we're going to snip off the top. And you want to maybe a 1/2 inch opening here at the top. Well, what you want to do, you want to kind of get the bag, hold it up to your nose, and you're going to squeeze it and squeeze the air into your nostrils. If you smell that sewer gas, you'll know it, the rotten egg smell, you'll know if there's something dodgy about it. So here we go. No smell. Actually, it smells like crab meat. So let's try the cooked chicken. I'm going to make a little bit of a hole here. Put up to my nose. Smells fine there. Let's try the scrambled eggs. I could smell the onions and the bacon in that. That smells good. Hamburger. I smell nothing with the hamburger. Okay, now let's try the raw chicken. Nothing on the raw chicken. Now, we're going to do the raw beef. The raw beef feels a little bit soft. And this was done on February 18th, 2020. In fact, all this food was done in 2020, so it's around 3 years old. So, this is the one that could be interesting. So let's cut off the corner. And we're going to burp it and see what it smells like. Okay, it smells kind of sour. So it may be the rotten egg smell, but smell is very important. You got to trust your senses when you do this. But this raw roast beef has just a sour kind of dish rag smell to it. So we're going to open this up here. Okay, the next thing you want to do is look at it. Now, I know what roast beef looks like, but if you can take a look at this piece, I hope it can come through. The color's kind of different. Now this piece right here looks a little bit better, but if you can compare the two pieces here, this is dark, kind of has an orange yellowish tint. This one doesn't. So look at it. And also while you're looking at it, look for any growth on it, anything that could be fuzzy. Look for that. Now, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to touch it. And sure enough, this meat is rubbery. Remember the ham we had? Well, this does not want to break. Now, if I look at this, is there any fat? Well, yeah, you know, I can see some fat here, some fat there, and some fat there. And this could have been in my early days when I wasn't quite as careful, but there is a little bit of fat here. Now, the last thing to check for is taste. Now, this is where things get kind of weird. Do you or can you get sick from eating rancid food? Or can you get sick from eating spoiled food? And you'll be surprised what the Food and Drug Administration says about spoiled food. And I did some research, and I contacted extension offices around the country in Maryland, in Illinois, in Washington, Oregon, Utah, Ohio. And I asked the question to a lot of the extension agents about rancid food and hydrogen sulfide gas. And I got basically one of two answers. The one that was kind of the was, when in doubt, throw it out. Okay, but that's not really a scientific answer. But the majority of the individuals, including the FDA, says that it's kind of okay to eat spoiled food. It may look funny, it may smell funny, it may even taste funny, but you probably won't get sick. So let me show you these quotes.
This is the official website from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also called Ask USDA. And they have several knowledge databases here on the subject of food spoilage. And we're going to take a look at some of these questions. The first question that is posed to the USDA is this: what are the signs of food spoilage? And they come down here, they answer that, saying that foods that deteriorate and develop an unpleasant odor, taste, and texture are spoiled. Spoiled bacteria can cause fruits and vegetables to get mushy or slimy, or meat to develop a bad odor. Most people would not choose to eat spoiled food. However, if they did, they probably would not get sick. So when it comes down to eating your food, if it's questionable, well, maybe you just want to go ahead and cook it up and see what happens, because if this is true, you probably won't get sick. So go ahead and taste the food and see how it tastes. I also found this article helpful from Christina Ballas, who is at the University of Montreal in food sciences. And she basically comes up with this statement, which is about the same as what the USDA says. The question she poses is, rancid food dangerous? And once again, she says and confirms that eating rancid food probably will not make you sick, but she goes on and says that the oxidation may lead to possible digestive issues, and that it's probably okay if you accidentally eat some rancid food. It's probably not going to hurt you, but also she comes back and says that regular consumption of rancid food could lead to other problems with your body. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you have some questionable food storage in your food supply, and you look at it, you smell it, you touch it, and you're not quite sure, then if you were just to taste a little bit of it, it probably won't hurt you to taste a little bit of the food to see if it's truly rancid or spoiled.
So the question is, what happened? What happened to my meat here? Well, either one of two things. When I did this food, maybe I didn't trust it enough, and maybe this did not get dry enough, and maybe there's still some ice crystals or cold spots in this meat, or it could be the fat. Now, one of the problems with fat is when fat breaks down, it turns down to glycerin, which in turn will break down to glucose, which then breaks down to pyruvic acid, and that can break down to water and CO2. As the fat decays, it can actually produce moisture, which can then rehydrate your food. It can lead to spoilage. Just because it's spoiled doesn't really mean it's bad. So it's up to you on what you want to do with some of your food that fails the five tests for being edible. This stuff right here, I'm probably going to toss it. But these other foods here seem to pass without any problem. So it's kind of a gut-wrenching thing that you have to kind of deal with. You know, there's a lot of money tied up in your food, and now I can't eat it. And once you find that the food is bad, you know, you might be able to cook it again, and I probably would. This was, after all, this was raw. So it's a judgment call on what you want to do, but chances are you probably will not get sick. Can't guarantee it, but if you go with what the FDA says and a lot of the experts, they still say you could probably eat this food. But once again, it's a judgment call that you're going to have to make. These are all the packages I just opened up, but I'm going to repackage everything here. And I went through, these are my ultimate eggs. Tastes great. This is my hamburger. Tastes great, a little bit bland. This is my cooked chicken. It is really dry. This is my imitation crab meat, which is basically already cooked. Tastes fishy. That's a joke. And this over here is my raw chicken. Because it's raw, I can't sample that. But what can you do now to ensure that the food you just freeze dried, the food you spent money on, is going to be good for the zombie apocalypse years from now? I used to just put my freeze dried food into a bag with an oxygen absorber, burped as much air as I could out of the bag, and I sealed it. And that seemed to do a pretty decent job. But even one bag of food that didn't make it is not good for me. And I've come across another way of doing food, and now all my food is vacuum packed. And I've made lots of videos on different ways of vacuum packing food. But I actually stumbled onto a vacuum chamber that is inexpensive. They can be around $100 to $150, and some of them even come with a vacuum pump. And that's what I use now. So I'm going to bag up all this into Mylar bags with a new oxygen absorber. I'm going to show you the next step in what I do to vacuum pack this food. Everything has been repacked, and each bag has a brand new oxygen absorber. And I just put down the original date with, like, the crab meat was in March 1st, 2020, repacked March 25th, 2023. So we're going to go ahead and just seal these up like normal and go on to the next step. When I bag up my packages, I usually put my sealer on the edge of the counter so the bags can hang over. And then I just put the bag far enough that I can just see the edge on this side, just right past the sealer arm. And I'll push it down, let it go through the cycle, and I'll let it hold just to cool down a little bit. And you always know when you have a good seal is when you can see the imprint of the Teflon fabric. I'll then flip it over, and then I'll put this edge of my last seal equal with the edge of the bar, and that will just seal that very top piece. So I basically have a double seal, one on top of each other at the very top of the bag. The next step is to make the vent hole where this seal and the manufacturer seal comes together, just about a 1/4 inch wide. Once the bags are all sealed and they have the vacuum vent cut, I'll just fold these over on themselves, just like that. I'll get a rubber band and just put a rubber band just like that to make a nice little package. What the rubber band does is usually when you go through the vacuum cycle, this tail wants to open up. And once it opens up, the food inside of here can move or can shift around. And folding them over with a rubber band just kind of holds everything in place. Now that that's done, we just have to take all these out to the garage and put them in the vacuum chamber. And we're going to put these into the pot with the valve on the top. We got 5 of these to put in there. And we'll put the lid on top, close the valve, turn on the pump. And once it gets up to about 20-25, that's going to be enough. Turn off the pump, release the valve. remove the top, and you can see how everything is nice and tight and vacuum sealed. And we're going to go back and take these back in the house and seal up the vent. And then just take off the rubber band, and if for some reason one of these didn't keep the seal, well, you can just take it back out and do it again. But these will usually keep the seal for quite some time, enough time to allow you to come back and seal these up. These are all vacuum sealed, and because they're vacuum sealed, they're going to take up less room. So I can fold these over and go ahead and put them into a tote or into a bin or whatever I'm going to do. And I'm now confident that with them being vacuum sealed with a fresh oxygen absorber, this food is going to last for years to come. Oxygen is the main perpetrator in spoiled food. Just remember, to have successful freeze-dried food, you need to follow the 4 rules of freeze drying. 1, you need to remove moisture, and the freeze dryer does that. You need to remove oxygen, and the oxygen absorber can do that. Vacuum packing can do that even better with an oxygen absorber. You need to remove light, and a Mylar bag or a storage bag can remove light. If you use jars, a dark room would be nice too. And you need to remove heat. Keep these bags somewhere where they remain cool. You remove those 4, your food could almost last a lifetime. So I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you learned something. Thank you for your support. Please subscribe, and as always, go forward and freeze dry the world.